Welcome to the deep dive. Getting powerful recurrent neural networks like LSTMs to train properly without just memorizing everything.
Uh,
That's been a real bottleneck, right? Especially for things like understanding language or speech.
it really has, and it limits how good these models can be.
Exactly. So today, we're digging into a really neat solution proposed in the paper Recurrent Neural Network Regularization. They found a clever way to use dropout, that standard regularization trick that actually works for RNNs.
Yeah, it's a surprisingly elegant fix because standard dropout, while great for feed-forward networks, just doesn't play well with the sequential nature of RNNs and LSTM.
Right, and this is important stuff. LSTMs are powering more and more AI, like translation tools, voice assistants, you name it. Better regularization means potentially much smarter AI.
Definitely. So our mission today is to unpack how this specific tweak to dropout helps LSTMs learn better and avoid overfitting, potentially paving the way for, well, bigger and better models for all sorts of sequence tasks.
Okay, that's good. Let's dive in. First off, maybe a quick refresher on standard dropout. What is it, and why does it usually fail in RNNs?
Sure. So standard dropout, during training, you randomly just switch off essentially a certain percentage of neurons for each training example.
Zero them out, right?
Exactly. You set their output to 0. And this forces the network not to rely too heavily on any single neuron. It has to learn more robust features.
Makes the network more resilient, kind of?
Precisely. It's super successful in feed-forward nets. It's like training a whole bunch of slightly different, smaller networks all at once and averaging them. Great for generalization.
Okay, simple enough.
Yeah.
But then you try this with RNNs, these networks built for sequences and memory,
Yeah.
and problems pop up. What's the snag? Baer and colleagues mentioned this back in 2013, I think.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah.
The core issue is the recurrence itself. RNNs feed their output from one time step back into the input for the next time step. That's how they handle sequences, how they have memory.
Mm.
Now, if you're randomly dropping neurons at every time step, you're injecting noise. But because of the recurrence, this noise gets amplified as it propagates through time.
So it just builds up and scrambles everything?
Pretty much. It makes it incredibly difficult for the network, especially in LSTM, which is designed for long-term memory, to actually learn those long-range dependencies.
Yeah.
It disrupts the very thing that makes them powerful.
Right. It's like trying to remember a phone number while someone keeps shouting random digits in your ear.
Yeah.
You just lose the thread.
Yeah,
So this paper's big idea is how to get around that.
exactly. Their solution is, well, deceptively simple in concept. They said, okay, let's apply dropout, but only to the non-recurrent connections.
Non-recurrent connections.
Okay.
So you mean the connections going like upwards between layers at the same time step?
That's it. Think of a multi-layer RNN. At each time step, information flows forward through time within a layer. Those are the recurrent connections. But it also flows up to the next layer. They proposed applying dropout only on those connections going up between layers, but leaving the connections that carry information through time completely untouched.
I see. The paper's figure 2 shows this, right? The dashed lines for dropouts are vertical between layers, not horizontal along the time axis.
Exactly that. Visually, it makes it quite clear.
So why does that work? Why is targeting just those connections the key?
Well, there are two main benefits. First, you still get the regularization effect you want. By dropping connections between layers, you're still forcing units in, say, layer 2, to be useful, even if some inputs from layer 1 are missing.
So it still prevents layers from becoming too codependent.
Right. It still encourages robust feature learning across the network's depth at each time step. But crucially,
They don't break the memory.
you got it. By leaving the recurrent connections alone, the LSTM's internal state, its memory cells, can propagate information across time steps without being constantly randomly disrupted by dropout noise.
Ah, okay. So the information flow through time is preserved, which is essential for sequence tasks. Figure 3 illustrates that pass, doesn't it? Showing how info moves across steps, only hitting dropout at layer transitions.
Yes, it shows that path quite nicely. The memory mechanism stays intact. The regularization happens purely in the vertical information flow between layers.
That's quite elegant, actually. And they weren't the only ones thinking along these lines. The paper mentions Pham et al. And Pochitariu and Sahani.
That's right. Pham and colleagues apparently developed the same method independently around the same time, specifically for handwriting recognition, and Pochitariu and Sahani had related ideas. It suggests this was a timely insight.
Okay, so the core idea is selective dropout. Before we hit the results, maybe just a quick word on LSTMs themselves. Why are they special for sequences?
Good idea. LSTMs are a type of RNN specifically designed to overcome the vanishing gradient problem and capture long-range dependencies. Stuff that happens way back in a sequence can still influence the output much later.
They have that memory cell thing, right?
Exactly. They have an explicit memory cell, and crucially, they have these things called gates, an input gate, a forget gate, and an output gate.
Gates, like little controllers.
Sort of, yeah. They learn to control the flow of information. The input gate decides what new information gets stored in the cell. The forget gate decides what old information gets thrown out. And the output gate decides what part of the cell state gets outputted.
Okay, so it's a much more sophisticated way of managing memory over time compared to a simple RNN. The paper has the equations in Figure 1, but the key is that structure allows them to remember or forget selectively.
Precisely. And that structure is why preserving the recurrent flow is so vital and why this targeted dropout makes sense.
All right, makes sense. Now for the proof, the experiments. They tested this across several different domains. Let's start with language modeling on the Pentree bank.
Right, the Pentree bank. It's a standard benchmark, relatively small by today's standards, maybe 800,000 words or so. The goal is to predict the next word in a sequence.
And the metric is perplexity. Lower is better.
Correct. Lower perplexity means the model is less surprised by the next word, so it's predicting better. They compared non-regularized LSTMs with medium and large LSTMs using their dropout method.
What kind of dropout rates did they use?
They used a dropout probability of 0.5 for both the medium, 500 units per layer, and large 1,000 units per layer, regularized models. Both were 2 layers deep.
And the results? Table 1 showed quite a jump, didn't it?
Yeah, a huge jump. The non-regularized baseline LSTM got a test perplexity around 114.5, the medium one with their dropout, 82.7.
Wow.
And the large regularized one, even better, 78.4. That's a massive improvement in prediction quality just from applying dropout correctly.
And that single large regularized model even outperformed an average of multiple non-regularized ones.
It did, and averaging multiple regularized large models pushed the perplexity down even further, below 70. It really shows how effective the regularization is. Better predictions, potentially leading to things like more helpful writing tools for you.
Yeah, that's compelling evidence for language modeling. They also included some generated text samples in Figure 4, right? Conditioned on the meaning of life is.
Uh-huh. And the generated text, while not perfect, obviously, shows a much better coherence and grasp of language structure compared to what you might expect from a less well-regularized model of that size back then. It's just a deeper understanding.
Okay. So big win in language modeling. What about speech recognition? They used an Icelandic data set.
Yes, Icelandic speech,
Right.
a smaller data set, which often makes overfitting more of a risk. Here, they looked at frame-level accuracy, how well the model predicts the correct sound unit at each moment in time.
And did the dropout help here too? Table 2, I think.
It did. The non-regularized model got about 68.9% accuracy on the validation set. With their dropout applied, that went up to 70.5%.
Okay, an improvement. But interestingly, the training accuracy actually went down a bit with dropout.
Exactly. And that's actually a good sign in terms of regularization. It means the model isn't just memorizing the training data, it's learning more general patterns, which leads to better performance on unseen data, the validation set.
Right, the classic sign of reduced overfitting, better generalization. So it works for speech too. Next up, machine translation. A much bigger task, right? WMT14, English to French.
Much bigger, hundreds of millions of words. A really challenging sequence-to-sequence problem. They use a deeper LSTM here, 4 layers on 1,000 units each.
And they measured perplexity again and also BLEU score for translation quality. Higher BLEU is better.
Correct. Higher BLEU score generally means the translation is closer to a human reference translation. Table 3 shows the results.
How do they compare?
Again, clear improvement. The non-regularized LSTM got a BLEU score of about 25.9. With dropout, they found an optimal rate of 0.2 for this task. The BLEU score jumped to 29.03. Perplexity also improved.
So noticeably better translations just by adding this specific dropout?
Definitely. They mentioned their LSTM didn't beat a specialized phrase-based system at the time, but the key point is that dropout significantly boosted the LSTM's own performance on this hard task. More accurate, more fluent machine translation.
Makes sense. One more domain, image captioning. MSCOCO dataset, how does that work?
Here, the model first uses a convolutional neural network, a CNN, to see the image and extract features. Then, an LSTM takes those features and generates a text caption, word by word.
Okay, so the LSTM is doing the sequence generation part, and they applied their dropout to that LSTM.
Yes, primarily to the LSTM part. And Table 4 shows, again, the regularized single model outperformed the non-regularized single model on both perplexity and BLEU score.
Interesting comparison there with ensembles, too.
Yeah, that was a key point. They found that their single regularized LSTM performed almost as well as an ensemble, meaning averaging the predictions of multiple non-regularized models.
So you get close to ensemble performance, but with just one model. That's a big deal, practically.
Huge. Ensembles are computationally expensive to train and run. If Dropout gets you similar results from a single model, that's a major efficiency win. Faster, cheaper to deploy.
Okay, so looking across all these different tasks, language, speech, translation, image captions, the pattern seems really consistent. This targeted dropout helps.
It really does. It consistently reduces overfitting and improves performance on unseen data, allowing for potentially larger, more powerful LSTMs to be trained effectively.
All right, let's try and wrap this up. The big takeaway from this deep dive seems to be, well, that dropout can work really well for LSTMs and RNNs, but you have to be smart about where you apply it.
Precisely. Standard dropout messes with the recurrent connections, disrupting memory. But this paper showed if you apply it only to the non-recurrent, feed-forward connections between layers at each time step.
You get the regularization benefits without crippling the model's ability to handle sequences.
Exactly. You force the layers to learn robust features, but you let the LSTM maintain its state and memory across time. A simple idea, but with significant impact shown across all those experiments.
Yeah, it feels like it unlocked dropout as a viable tool for RNNs, which was a pretty big deal for training larger models back then, and the principle still holds.
It really does. It emphasizes that you need to tailor your techniques, like regularization, to the specific architecture you're working with. One size doesn't fit all in deep learning.
So a final thought then for you, our listener, building on this. If this targeted approach dramatically improved RNN regularization, what does that imply for future AI? Think about applications needing sophisticated sequence, understanding maybe much more natural chatbots, better medical diagnostic tools analyzing time series data, or even more creative AI.
And maybe more broadly, what other fundamental techniques in deep learning might have hidden potential if we just tweak them slightly, understanding the underlying mechanisms a bit better. What other limitations might not be as fundamental as we think.
Definitely something interesting to consider. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.